rest of the world was supposed to look at Israel and say, they love each other better than we do. People are more free. People are more whole. Nobody's hungry. Nobody's in need. Because of the way they live with each other, they have a better life than we do, so we want to learn about why they live that way. Really, that was supposed to be the intent of the law. Was it supposed to get the attention of the world so people would want the God of Israel? So basically, if you live according to the law, if everybody in the community lived according to the law, then everybody would be blessed. So if everybody lived according to the law, then you wouldn't have to worry about stuff being stolen because nobody would be stealing anything. You wouldn't have to worry about somebody giving a false story about you or your reputation being ruined because people would only be speaking good things about each other. You wouldn't worry about anybody being hungry because everybody would be sharing their food with each other. That if everybody lived according to law, not only would they be blessed, but the people around them would be blessed. That was the intention. Sort of reminds me of you just growing up in Iowa. That in the farm in Iowa, my dad could leave his wallet sitting inside the front door in an unlocked house for all day and not worry about it. There's just something about the freedom of being able to do that. So that's a gift. The law is not meant to be some sort of burden that we have to struggle through to do, but it's meant to be a way of living that helps us to live life where we don't hurt each other, we don't hurt ourselves, where everyone is free, where everyone is receiving what they need to receive. So at some level, we as Christians are still to be people who are proponents of the law of God. Because if we live that way, not only are we blessed, but those around us will also be blessed. But Jesus has this habit of kicking things up a few notches every time he starts talking. And the Sermon on the Mount is all of a sudden about a whole different level of why we do things than just performance of following the law. The Old Testament was basically, how will they know that you're followers of God? You're followers of the law. But Jesus is going to invite them to be recognized for a different purpose. You remember when he shares the Last Supper with his disciples, how he says that the world is going to recognize that they're followers of Jesus? By how well you keep the law? No, by the way you love each other. So it's not that they're going to end up living lives of less discipline, but doesn't love actually usually call us to live something higher than just following the rules? You don't have to be told to have a rule that says every morning, love your wife, or be good to your wife, but you should actually just treat your wife well because of love. You don't need to have some rule telling you to do it. So Jesus is inviting them to look at the rules and appreciate them. Jesus never says he's getting rid of the rules, because the rules are still a gift. As a matter of fact, he says that not one little stroke of a letter of the law is going to go away. But he comes to be the end of the law. And I think first, when I was younger, I thought that meant, well, the end of the law means that we don't have the law anymore. But that's not what the word means. The word is basically the desired result of the law. I've come to bring you to the whole point of why the law was here in the first place. And the whole point of why the law is here in the first place is it can help you to love each other. So Jesus is going to say things like that when he sees the Pharisees who are sticklers at following the law and being proponents of the law. He's going to say, you're so good at following all the details, even tithing the little spices on your shelf, but you're missing the whole point. The whole point is to help you to have mercy, is to teach you how to love. So he's going to drive them crazy because they're going to be watching for the details of the law, and he's going to actually be saying, let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you to live the way that God designed this life. And it's based on love. So throughout the New Testament, he's teaching them the kingdom of God. And the kingdom of God, it's sort of like, I guess the picture that I have is that when you're raising a family, at some point when they're young, you just say, these are the rules. Follow the rules of the household, and you won't hurt each other, and things will be peaceful. But hopefully, by the time your children are 48 or 50 or something like that, you don't need to tell them to follow the rules just for the sake of following the rules. Hopefully, they will have developed actual character themselves. They would have actually learned how to love themselves, so that you don't need to tell them to follow the rules to avoid punishment, but they understand that the whole point of it is to learn to love people, that it's to have something motivate you from the inside rather than rules tell you what to do from the outside. So I think that's what Jesus is inviting his disciples. You've heard it said that this is the way you do things to make sure that you follow the basic requirements of the law. But when you're just following the basic requirements of the law, who are you really looking at? Even if you're doing nice things, you're looking at yourself, right? You might be serving a poor person, but you're looking at yourself while you're serving the poor person. You might be feeding a hungry person, but you're looking at yourself while you're feeding the hungry person to make sure that you're getting your check mark or your golden star by your name. But Jesus is saying the kingdom of God is a different kind of motivation. That if what you're doing is trying to count if you walked far enough carrying the soldier's stuff, then you're missing the point. The whole point is you get to serve the soldier. The soldier tells you that he needs you to carry something for a mile. Don't just watch your pedometer or whatever you have and say, okay, I'm at a mile now, so here's your stuff. But you know what, let me carry this a little bit longer. Soldiers, you have hard work, so let me help you out a little bit more. Basically, the whole point is to turn out from yourself and focus on loving the other person. So even things like, you've heard it said that you should, or an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I always thought that was a pretty barbaric thing, but at the time that law was made, it was actually meant to avoid barbaric things happening. Because what would happen if somebody in one village did something to another village? They wouldn't just say, okay, well, let's make sure this is fair, let's only hurt one person in their village to get even. They would hurt a whole bunch of people in that village to get even. So basically the law was to make sure that they actually had mercy, and said that you make sure that the punishment is appropriate rather than too much. So, okay, so that was a gift to help them to not be quite so harsh. But Jesus said even that whole point of making sure that you don't go too far is still, who are you looking at? You're looking at yourself. Am I getting the retribution that I want? And Jesus says, as long as you're looking at yourself, you're not motivated by the kind of motivation that the kingdom of God is motivated by. So the kingdom of God is really meant for us to grow up spiritually, to not need to be told, follow this rule or you're going to get punished, but to get to the place where we experience the heart of our Father. We start to see things the way our Father sees things. And we don't need to be told, like if you grow up in a family business, you get to the place where you don't need to be told by the time you're an adult in that business what you're supposed to be honest. Basically, by that point, you said, well, I was taught my whole growing up that this family business, we're honest with people. You don't need to tell me to do that. That's just what I've learned to do. So, as Jesus is inviting us to learn how to live in the kingdom, what he's really inviting them to do is to learn how to love. That to get to that place where you're not looking at yourself to make sure that you're meeting the minimum requirements, but to actually recognize the person in front of you and say, how can I bless you? And not just love the people that are easy to love, but the early church grew. I mean, part of the early church growing was they displayed the power of God. But a big part of the early church growing was displaying the love of God. That you looked at villages in the early church, and one of the examples was if a plague or some disease was coming through town, usually people would say, well, I'm getting out of town, I'm leaving my sick relative to die so that I don't get sick myself. But who would stay behind and care for that sick relative? The Christians would. So they'd come back and say, why did you risk your life to love my relative when I wasn't willing to do that? I mean, that was the kind of thing that the Christian community was meant to do. Was in the Old Testament, it was to get people's attention by having laws that helped them to love each other better. But in the New Testament, it was meant to get people's attention by loving people that nobody expected them to love, and by serving people that nobody expected them to serve. And so, ultimately, what Jesus is inviting them to do is to become connected to the heart of God, and not just become dependent upon the laws of God. So that they end up living in such a way that because we end up advertising what we focus on. If we focus on the written law, then what we're advertising is the written law. If we focus on the heart of God, what are we advertising? We're advertising the heart of God. So why do you end up loving your enemy and praying for those who persecute you? Because that's the way the family business works. That's the way our Father showed us how to do things. And we just learn to do it. We don't need to be told to do that, but that's just the way our family does things. So I invite you to look at your own life. Maybe some of you are disregarding some of the basics of the law. Even though you know you shouldn't be doing something or you should be doing something, you think you know better. Let me encourage you that the one who made the law knows better than you do. So it's a gift. And maybe God's getting your attention that you need to actually do what God's calling you to do. But that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that God's calling you to just experience His love, to be loved in such a way that you don't need to focus on yourself anymore, to experience God's love in such a way that you start seeing other people the way that He sees people, and loving people the way that He loves people. So look at what your motivation is. I know my motivation is, I do want to make sure I follow the rules, but I also want to be an adult. I want to be an adult where my motivation is no longer what that rule that's written in front of me, or that punishment that maybe is coming because I don't follow that rule. But I want my motivation to be the love of God. And then I won't need to be told the rules anymore, because love is the fulfillment of the law. Love causes me to do the things that the law tries to enforce me to do. So I invite you to look at your own life. Are you honoring God's law because it's a gift? But more importantly, are you experiencing your Father's love and being transformed on the inside? So you don't need to be told what to do anymore. Amen.